Are you drowning in customer tickets and questions, spending hours trying to find the right person for your question? I have the solution for you. In the next 30 minutes, watch me build a Slack bot trained on your company docs, previous support tickets, and it responds with real answers and facts within seconds. No more AI making stuff up. It will save you hours every week. Stick around until the end, and I'll show you step by step how you can build the same bot and turn AI into a game changer for you. Hey, I'm Remi, software engineer turned AI automation guy. I help SaaS startups scale without the operational overhead and without increasing headcount, mostly by automating boring tasks in your day-to-day. Today, I will walk you through how to build a Slack knowledge assistant that knows everything about your company and can give you any answers within seconds. I will use N8N to build the automation and AI agent and Supabase for the knowledge base. Don't be scared, I will talk you through all of that. So first, we will prepare the data in Google Drive and ingest that information so that the AI can understand it. Then we will build the AI agent to power the Slack bot. And if you're confused about AI agents, don't worry about it. Check out my video explaining what AI agents are in simple terms and analogies. You'll definitely get it. All right, let's get started. We're gonna be doing phase one first. So the phase one is about preparing the data so that we can later on easily plug that into the AI agent. So what we're gonna be doing here is creating a new workflow. If you are not familiar with that or not familiar with N8N, watch the video about what is an AI agent in general that will walk you through exactly how to understand this. This is probably a good place to start before we dive into that Slack GPT one. So create that new one, and then we're gonna call this build knowledge base. So the way that's going to work is I have set up a bunch of documents. This is all kind of made up based on what I've done in previous companies. So there's an implementation SOP, which we could be using on what is the process for client implementation. Then there's some data privacy documents, docx and PDF format. Some are covering some really basics like how things are encrypted in the event of a data breach, how quickly we respond, how to contact for privacy. There's all you might need from a data privacy. There's some more in the docx is here. And then I generated 2 Zendesk exports as PDF in here. And what's interesting from those is just a long back and forth on someone raising a specific error and what was the resolution for that. Same here, there was an error 4.3 forbidden on a specific API call. So we can get into that. What's really crucial for that step, if you do that for your own company, is you're gonna want to anonymize as much as possible from all those documents. It is a big no-no to actually import real customer data and use that. So in general, the recommended way is to obfuscate as much as possible, even remove. That's not really helpful in the case of what we're trying to build. There's no need to be able to retrieve personal information. For the sake of that Slack bot, this is not needed. I would remove names, emails, anything that is not necessarily for the point of what we're trying to do. You want to really focus on getting clean data exported. This could be a one-time thing, or you could have it on a recurring basis. You could even set it up as a new automation flow. I'm not going to go into that today, but that could actually be a pretty good idea on how to make this even better, is by expanding how much you automate and how much you take in from other places. You could take from exports of Slack, you could integrate with Zendesk, with other ticketing system, internal knowledge, video recording, or demos, or product walkthrough. You can really take all of this and really make this even better. All your company data, you could put it in here. But in this case, I'm going to be focusing on really 2 formats, the docx and PDF. So we're going to be doing that in here. In order to store that and retrieve that from the automation point of view, I'm going to be using Google Drive because that's a pretty easy one and a pretty common one in the Google stack. You could use Dropbox, you could use Notion, you could use a lot of different places to get your documents. I just want to do that in here. It's just going to be easier. I'll be uploaded those documents, but what I actually want to do is for every time a document is uploaded is to turn that into the AI vector database. And reminder, I also have a video on vector database and what that means and how to turn specific content into meaning so that later on the AI can retrieve really the portion that makes the most sense and get the best answer for you. So in general, what we're going to be doing here is I'm going to be doing my first step. So we're going to be looking at Google Drive on changes involving a specific folder. So I already connected my Google Drive. You're going to want to create a new credential in here. It is not as simple as some other Google integrations, unfortunately. What I recommend is to click that Ask Assistant, which I just did, and it will actually walk you through step by step what you need to do in order to do that. For that to work, you need to pass in your client ID and your client secret. So in order to generate that, it will show you exactly in a minute on the right side. Right, so it tells you to create a new project. You need to enable the API, which is just a button to click here. Then you need to create the OAuth consent screen, which again is kind of just you put in the name and hit next. And then you'll create a credential. So here's what it looks like once you create it. If you already have one, maybe check with your IT or security team. Maybe you already have a Google account, so you can just centralize that. But all you need to do is really to create that OAuth client ID. So you create a new one, a new OAuth client ID in here, web application. Again, this is all documented in the assistant that I just showed you. I put N8N as the name, but if you have multiple, eventually you might want to specify that. And the authorized redirect URI, the redirect URL is actually the one that they're telling you to copy. So you just copy that and paste that in here, and it will actually generate the client ID and secret for you. And you just have to paste that in, save, and you're done. All right, so I've already done that, so I'm gonna skip through that, and you're gonna see exactly what I see in here. So remember from my last video, you always want to have something to work from so that you can drag and drop later on, so you don't have to go into the syntax. It's much easier to build from there. So I just want to make sure everything is right in here. Trigger on changes involving a specific folder from a specific list. It found the company docs folder from there, and I want to watch for file created. We can get into some other ones later on, like file updated, to make this even better. So from there, we can fetch some test event. It's not going to find anything because there is just no data right now. So we're going to be adding our first document in there. All right, so this is our data privacy policy. In here, I actually turned it into a Google Doc. So you know how in here you can download in many different formats. This one is going to allow me to download in plain text later on. So that's a nice trick to just be using as much as possible, especially for docx or proprietary format like Excel or something like that. So you can turn that into a Google way. So I have this document right here, and I'm going to fetch again. All right, it found the document, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. You can pin that if you want, but most likely we're not going to be adding any new one for now. So it found that there's a little check mark, which means that worked exactly as intended. So in here, what we need to do is to download the file. So I'm going to go into Google Drive. I'm going to download the file download from list, similar as before. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of what's called metadata. It's additional information about the file that might not be visible. It's not really the content. Well, the permissions, who's the owner, what you can do, permission IDs. There's just a lot of different things in there. But what you're looking for is the ID at the root of it, directly under Google Drive trigger. Actually, so you first need to select by ID, so it knows you're getting the specific file ID, and then you go and drag and drop this specific one. So you have the ID of the file, which is a very unique string that Google Drive is generated. We can test that. It should download things for us. So if you download as is, because it's a Google Doc, it will actually download it as a docx, but we actually don't want that. We want to convert it into text because it's much easier for the AI to process later on. So in the option, I added Google File Conversion, and I'm going to add the conversion. So automatically it will turn Google Docs into what we don't want. We don't want HTML. We want just plain text. If you have any sort of drawings, it will turn into JPEG. That's fine. Google Slides probably would want PDF, and then Google Sheets would be CSV. So it's more standardized ways that AI can understand better than the proprietary docx, etc. So let's test again. And there you go. Now you see that it's plain text. So I'm going to view it. All right, there's just all the content that is downloaded in there. That is perfect. So in this case, we want to handle sort of two paths from here. The first one is if I have a docx, I really need to actually leverage that text directly. If it is a PDF, it's kind of a different way to read it. So I'm going to add a switch, which is kind of a way to branch things out. So an important one is to be looking at the MIME type in here. So the MIME type is actually a way to categorize what type of document that is. That's just a sort of a technical term, but this is really just what type of document. So I'm just gonna, again, drag and drop here, and it will automatically say, well, if the MIME type is this one, which in our case is a docx, then we'll have our first path. And then I'll add a different routing rule, which is if the MIME type is application/PDF, which is the official one for PDF. You could look it up for any other ones. You just Google that. Every type has an official MIME type, so you can use that. So in our case, it should go towards the first one, right? Because we have a docx. It did. And so the way that it works is it has multiple outputs. So you have output 1 or output 0 or output 1. And based on that, in this case, we have one item in 0, but nothing in 1. So that's exactly what we wanted. In this case, it picked the first path, which is the Google Doc path. And then the second path, if it was a PDF, then it would have taken that path, right? You see that it's ingrained. That means it's taken the first branch. So in the case of a docx, because we exported it as text, actually, then we can easily extract from file. We want to extract from text file. We can leave everything as default. That's perfect in here. We can even test it. Indeed, it took the data right away. So it essentially turned the text file into actual content that we can pass into the AI. And then very similar, it's just that instead of extracting from text file for the second path that we have for PDF, well, we want to extract from a PDF. Same thing, everything's default. I can't really test it because there is no data right now, but we can test it later on with actual PDFs that we need to export. All right, so we have the file, we have it downloaded, we have the full content from the file, which if you had to do it manually, you would do the same thing, right? You would download the file locally, copy the entire content, and then pass that into the prompt if you needed it. And what we are going to want to do is create a vector store. So sort of database of all the meanings and every chunk of text that we have imported so that we can easily retrieve it later on. So if someone has a similar question, we can grab everything within the same meaning and enrich that with RAG, right? And again, watch that video if you're not familiar with that concept. Very easy to get. I have a great video that breaks it down into very simple terms. In just a few minutes, you'll get the gist. So watch that video. I'll link it here. So in that case, we want we're going to be using Supabase. It's a great one because I use it for, it integrates with Lovable. I have another video on Lovable as well. It's a great platform. It's free to get started with it and it works great. In this case, we're going to add documents to it. So again, we're just going to read all of the content and then turn that into vectors, which are again, turning that into meaning so that later on we can retrieve it. So very similar as before, I already have the Supabase integration. In your case, you're going to want to create a new integration. Same thing, ask the assistant. It's very easy. You're going to create a whole new account. You're going to end up in this specific screen. You can see it will create the project. It's going to take a few minutes to generate everything. If you look at the tables, it's just going to be empty. You have essentially an empty database. Now you're going to be able to add some stuff to it, and I'll get to that in a second. But for now, what you need to grab for the sake of authentication, the steps here, it will generate a project URL automatically when creating the account, and it will create a service role secret. So similar, you're going to want to grab that. It's still generating here. It will be there in a second. All right, so it just generated it. All I had to do is to just wait it out after creating the account. It generated a project URL and an API key, which are the exact two things that we need in order to create it. Then you hit save and it should all go through super smooth and you should have your integration. So that should show up in here as the first one, just like me as a Supabase account. Now it's gonna try to connect to a specific table. So it's gonna ask to put in a table, which we don't have at this point. So here's the trick, and that's gonna make your life so much easier to set this up. Hit the docs button right here at the top right. And in here, there's a quick start for setting up your vector store. So here is the script that will actually create the exact table that you need that works in most cases for general documents, which is perfect for us. And that works really well for what we need. And remember, a vector is 1536 dimensions. So this is exactly what we need. You just copy all that. You even hit the copy right here, and then you go into Supabase. So you're just going to paste that in directly in here, run, success. No rows returned, that's totally expected because you're actually not returning any content. You just created everything that was necessary. So if you go into table editor, you should now see that documents table, which is empty right now. And we're going to populate that with all the information from the vectors that we just created. So going back to N8N, you see from the list, it will actually populate 2 new things. Don't worry about RPC, just worry about documents, which is the new table that was automatically created. Embedding batch size can be 200. We can leave everything default. That's perfect. We're not going to test it quite yet because we need to add in a few more things. All right, so for a vector store to work, we need to actually add an AI model to it. So an embeddings model specifically. Going to put away the assistants, embeddings OpenAI. I think I still have some free credits, but you could plug in some actually other one if you wanted to. All right, so we have that. And then in the vector store, you actually need to load the documents. You can load it from GitHub or just the default one, which I would recommend in this case. So everything can stay default. But one key thing is that you're going to want to keep track of all your Google Drive file IDs in the metadata. And the reason for that is if later on you want to update a specific document, you don't want the outdated data to still live there. You want to be able to scrape that off. So you'll be able to look that up if needed. So I'm going to add in the option, the metadata. I'm just going to call it D drive file ID. So in order for me to drag and drop, I actually had to go back and test the vector store so that it starts showing the input. And so now in the default data loader, I actually see my information. It's okay if there's an error for now. But what's crucial is to be able to get the actual file ID, which is the ID that we were using earlier, because then I can just magically drag and drop. All right, so I have my default data loader. And remember, in order to have really large documents, you need to chunk them up, because if not, it's going to be very heavy in terms of processing. Every single time you're going to have to look up the entire document, especially the bigger the documents, the more intensive it is there. I recommend the recursive because that is the most efficient one for most use cases. I'm going to start with chunk size of 500. I like to work in smaller chunks because it's just easier to bucketize things a bit better and to have a bit of overlap. So if the answer happens to be in two separate chunks and it was like cut in the middle, then you still have some overlap in between. So I'm going to use 150 as an overlap for now. You can fine tune this based on your document size. All right, we have everything in here. So we're gonna try again the vector store. It had an error before because it was missing things from the data loader. That's okay. All right, so it took up the input document and it chunked it up. It created a vector so that I can reference it later on. And if I go to my table, well, it did exactly what I needed, which is it created chunks of 500 in here with some overlap, with some metadata. And remember, I wanted the G drive file ID to be added. It's perfect. It's exactly what I needed. So if later on I want to delete one document, then it will find all the ones with that specific file ID. And then I have the embedding, which is actually the most important part, because then based on the user's question, it will try to find an embedding that is close and find all the similar meaning, and we'll get the answer within just a second. So this is perfect. This is just one document. I'm going to be adding the other documents in, and we're going to be testing the entire workflow. There are ways to also expand on that. I mentioned that earlier. We can definitely make this entire process a bit better. This is just for file creation for now, but we could even create a new trigger for file updated and any sort of deletion or subfolders, and you'll probably want to handle multiple cases. For now, this is just to get started. Docx PDF, it's a great place to start. Oh, and I forgot actually in here, well, the PDF should be connected to the vector store. So it will be doing the exact same process, whether it is text from a PDF or from a Google Doc, it's the same process. It wants me to rerun it again, and we are good to go here. All right, so you have your knowledge base built up, right? So that's very easy. In just a few clicks, we had that working. Now I will add the other files in there, the PDF, and they will create everything automatically. All right, so I uploaded the PDF here and did the fetch test again. It found it, that's perfect. It did collect the MIME type application PDF. So we have exactly what we want, and we can test the entire thing. All right, so you see it took the bottom path, which is perfect because that was PDF, it added everything in here. Let's take a look, and we have our PDF in here. There's some extra data in here that might not be relevant. That's not too much of an issue. We could also leverage some other third parties if we wanted some more PDF, but as is, this is getting all the information. It chunks it up. The G drive file ID is different. That's all I need. That's perfect. Let me do that with all the other folders. I'm going to cut through and come back when we're done. All right, so I imported all the documents in here. It's just those 4 for now, but obviously for a company, you would want as much as possible. Again, you could take from Notion, you could take any export you wanted, all of your official documents. And this is just Google Drive trigger, but you could also integrate with other triggers like Notion or Confluence or something like that. And it ran through it. I didn't set it live, but once you're actually ready and you want that on a constant basis, just activate the workflow and it will automatically turn that for you. As I said before, you could create the file, the Google Drive trigger for file updated. That's a nice to have, but for now, this is good as is. Pretty simple workflow, a lot of drag and drop, but you have your official vector database that you could pull from. Now it's the easy part. Let's get into that. That's phase 2. We're going to create a new workflow. Here it is. Slack GPT. All right, that one should be very straightforward. It's mostly playing around with Slack. So similar as before, you want the Slack trigger. So you want to trigger on the bot mention. Similar as before, I already have the Slack connected, but similar, you just ask the assistant. It will exactly walk you through everything that you need to do. On my side, I created an app, Slack bot policies. Terrible name, but you can make one a bit more fun. I put an image. You're going to need to install that app directly in your organization. So a pretty important piece is the OAuth and permissions in here. It's going to generate, once you create your app, it's going to generate a bot user OAuth token, which is exactly what you need to paste into N8N. And that's the second you save, it's going to test it for you and you should be all set. The important piece next to it is the ability to actually, you want to give it some extra permissions to be able to read content, post content, add some reactions, the entire history if you want. You can control that set of permissions. Let me show you. It's the same page. In the bot token scopes, what I added in here is all the scopes that I want for my application. So app mentions read, which means when you do the @Slackbot policy, you want it to be able to write as an app agent. You want to be able to read the channel. You want to be to write. You can give it some commands. I wanted the reactions just because it's a bit more fun, and I wanted, as soon as the agent sees the question, it puts a thumbs up. So the user knows it's being acknowledged, and then later on it will actually respond. And then, you know, who's asking that question in case you want to track that or have a more personalized answer later on. I added that one. You don't have to. If you change the scope, keep in mind you need to reinstall the app. So add all of that, then install the app ideally. All right, so going back to N8N, because you added your token, as I mentioned before, you should be all set. And you will see the exact same thing I'm seeing here, which is your Slack account. You want trigger on but mention. You want to select a channel to watch for. In this case, I created a new channel, so it's a terrible name. You should probably have a better one, like customer support questions or AI questions, something like that anyone can go to. And that's all you need for the trigger. So every time it will trigger that new workflow. All right, it's listening. I'm gonna post something in the channel. All right, so I'm just gonna ask this as an example. How do you encrypt data at rest? One important thing that I forgot to mention is that it will generate a webhook URL, but the issue is that the test and production URLs are different. So keep that in mind when you actually go live. You're gonna want to switch to the production URL. But for now, because we're testing, let's copy that one and let's add that into Slack. So in the event subscriptions page, you wanna enable the events, and I have the production one actually, so I'm gonna switch that. All right, so you can see it has the webhook test in here, which actually indicates this is the right one. This is the test one. So it's listening for a test event. So I'm gonna post that same comment again, see what happens. All right, it found it. That's perfect. So it found how do you encrypt data at rest. That's perfect. That's what I wanted. That's perfect for my example. As I've said before, you can always pin it down if you think that channel is going to be somehow active. You just want to be sure to work off of that example. So from there, it's actually pretty easy. Well, you got the message. All you need to do is to pass that into the AI agent that connects to Supabase and then return that in Slack. So it's only a couple steps and nodes, as it's called in ADN. So I want to first add a quick reaction. So I'm going to do Slack. In the reaction action, I do want to add one. Slack should be the same. Reaction add from list. I still want to do new channel. And the key here to respond to the right one is that Slack uses the event timestamp. So that's the one in here. I'm going to drag and drop into the message timestamp. The emoji code, there's a full list that you can find in here. I don't want to focus too much on that. I'm going to put +1 as the thumbs up, which is very easy. I can test that. I should be able to get that immediately. All right, look at that. Got the thumbs up officially from Slackbot policies. And as you can see on the right, it just said okay because there's not much to return. It actually did the action. Let's get into the AI agent. It's not really a chat. Chat is more like in ADN, you can have a direct chat. In this case, we just want the output to be returned, and then we'll pass that into Slack later on. For the prompt, so remember there's a user message and we're going to be creating the system message. The system message is defining who is the person thinking and acting. The user message is what is the actual user asking for. So there's two things we could grab. We could grab the text, but it has like some weird characters because of the @Slackbot. So I'm going to take the clean one, which is this one, the text. Again, drag and drop. No one likes to be typing all of this thing. It actually shows the example, how you encrypt data at rest. I'm going to pass in a system message, not that much bigger. You're a helpful assistant that uses the Supabase vector database to retrieve information about the company. Nicely respond to the user. One thing I like to add is if you don't know the answer, don't make anything up. Just say you're not sure. It can be quite frustrating when it just makes up a whole answer that is totally inaccurate. That's an important piece. Before I test this, we're going to need to plug that into the chat model. I'm using OpenAI. Still have some free credits. That's perfect. Can leave everything default. We can put it in memory if we want to have long threads conversation. For now, we don't really need the memory. And in the tools, remember, we're using the Supabase vector store, so might as well use it. So it's going to retrieve documents as tool for the AI agent, which is exactly what we want. You just need to give it a name. It's recommending company knowledge base. I'm going to put in just that. It requires a description, also specifically for the AI agent to know what that tool means. All right, so that's knowledge base with all the company data and previous customer support tickets in Supabase. It's asking for which table inside Supabase you want to use. Again, this is the two that we generated. Only the first one is the documents. That's the one we care about. How many responses do we want? So out of everything that has similar meaning, do you want 4? Do you want 10? The more you increase that limit, the more information you're going to actually retrieve from the store, but it can just make things slower, and sometimes you just actually get things that are not relevant anymore. If you only have 3 things that make sense, if you actually put 10, then it's going to start going into things that are like really, really far for it to make sense. So I like to find something around, 5, maybe a bit more, like 7 or 8 max. It really depends on the use cases. So let's try 4 for the time being. This is the only tool we need. All the data is in there already. So remember that it also needs the embedding on the AI agent, because it's going to have to turn whatever the Slack is into an actual vector so that it could find similar meaning. Everything default is perfect. It's red for a second, but usually clears. There we go. And now we can run the test. Let's see what the AI agent says. There we go. It says we use AES 256. That's perfect. That seems to be accurate. Very nice. Even asks if they want to know more. Now that we have the AI agent working, then let's go into responding. And we want to send a message. So this is the output from the AI agent. So this is obviously what we want to return in here. It's sharing the example. That's why I like to test along, because you can really just copy paste everything that you need and have the right results already. So it's sending its message in the channel. You could also just DM the person, but have not tested that. From list, still want that same channel. Now, I personally don't like to spam everyone in that specific channel. So I'm gonna do a reply, which is actually using the thread in here. So it's asking what's the timestamp, which is the sort of the ID, the identification of the message in that channel. And then reply to thread is actually a pretty bad name, but it's whether you want to have the reply visible for everyone in the channel. So that's sort of the checkbox that you have in the thread. I don't want that because, again, the whole point is to not spam everyone. So let's try that. So it returns some stuff. Okay, true. That's all I care about for right now. Let's take a look. And it did respond in the Slack channel in here. All right, so let's go live. That way I can keep trying and keep pushing it a bit further. So the whole thing is working great. I just want to activate it. So the whole thing is going to be live. Now keep in mind the trigger, because now we have switched from test to production, we actually need to copy that new one and update Slack. If not, it will be sending to the wrong place. All right, that verified it. I'm pushing it. And we should be live. Let's try another few questions. I shouldn't have to do anything in N8N anymore. It will just post everything directly. There's a bunch of test data from before, so apologies on that. All right, so how fast do we respond in case of a data breach? So you see, you put the thumbs up pretty quickly, but then it takes a few seconds to actually think, but it's a good way for the user to know, okay, the AI is working on it. Perfect. In the event of a data breach, affected clients will be notified within 72 hours. So that is factually correct. We did look at this earlier. That is the correct answer. It's even put very nicely. Sometimes you could even just paste whatever a client asks in an email, just paste the email and it will just find that information directly. So it is really cool. All right, so we're gonna test something to actually test the Zendesk tickets. It's showing a specific error message that I know for a fact was in one of the support tickets. So let's see if it found it. Actually got the perfect answer. It's a really long answer, but it's actually summing up all the things that you could be doing to help with that. So make sure you're using the latest version of your browser, which I would, as a support person, I would first ask incognito, browser extensions, talks about ad blockers, which was in the ticket. That's correct. Clearing the cache, I would recommend the same thing. Specific extensions, which was actually the fix in one of the tickets, was I put the Rakuten extension. It could be anything, but this is factually found from your very older support ticket, and it is able to specifically spit that back out. So it is very cool. Let's try one more. We had another support ticket with a 403. Let's see what was recommended there. All right, so same as usual. I like the thumbs up because it's acknowledging and you know it's being worked on, and then a few seconds later the reply comes through, and well, I'm not mistaken, but this is exactly what it had in there. Please check HTTPS. It is very specific. It couldn't be more targeted at my own API. It is actually showing me you should update HTTP to HTTPS. And in the ticket, it said it is a very common issue. And so in this case, this is an internal Slack GPT, but you could also turn that on into Zendesk and really cut in half all the repetitive support tickets, or even more. Most of the usual tier 1 tickets, it's a really easy one to resolve. Let me see if there's one more thing that I could use in there. All right, backup data is purged automatically on a 30-day rolling basis. So let me ask a question about this. Might be a weird way to phrase it, so let's see. Almost verbatim the right answer, right? And it even translates it into something more meaningful. It also grabbed another related piece, which is that we keep 60 days after termination. So yeah, this is all extremely accurate. That is just based on 4 documents. So imagine if you turn that on for your entire support system. That could be a game changer for any sort of questions. And as you can see, it's really, really fast. It's very easy to get that set up, and the results are very impressive and very accurate. You could always tweak things if that doesn't work for you. You could always expand on it. You could spend like an entire day to really make this more polished, but I bet you that if you turn that on right now, you're already going to be saving hours of work for your entire team. And that just took me 30 minutes or not even to set that up. So very, very impressive results. All right, Slack GPT is live and your team's happier and you just saved 10 hours a week in boring questions. Grab your Slack GPT kit completely free in the description. It will contain the N8N workflow JSON that you can just import within a few seconds and have all of that done for you. And it will also contain all of the prompt and test documents from my video for you to test it. If you found this helpful, like and subscribe for more content coming soon. Comment how much time you think that would save you, and more videos with other boring tasks to automate coming very soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.